I've got props. The story begins, as so many good stories begin, with a girl. Begins with a teenaged girl named Mary. Cece, are you out there? Come on up. We're gonna do a pageant, friends. You never get to do a pageant at this service, but I've got a Mary, a willing Mary. I've got a chair for you too. There you go. Cece, how old are you?
I'm 13.
Cece is 13. She's a little bit young, but only by about a year, because we think Mary was probably 14, 15, maybe 16 years old. There you go. She was young. She was inexperienced, probably pretty terrified when an angel dropped out of the sky and into her living room and said, hey, I've got a really interesting invitation for you. How would you like to bear the Messiah? Mary is engaged to be married, but they're not married yet, and she knows if she says yes to this invitation, it will get her in a lot of trouble, potentially, for all kinds of reasons, right? Healthcare in the first century AD is pretty scant, so it's a dangerous thing to bear a child then as now. And the social stigma, the scandal of this birth cannot have been lost on this intrepid, strong, courageous, amazing teenage girl. Teenage girls have been changing the world since 1 AD, and they will keep doing it for years and years to come. Heaven without end. Amen. Thanks be to God. We're looking to you, my dear. So the angel asks for Mary's consent, which is really important, right? This does not just happen to her. It is not imposed upon her. The angel says, will you say yes to this? And Mary says, yes, I consent. Let it be to me according to your word. The angel departs from her. And then she has to do a very scary thing. She has to tell her boyfriend. Do I have a Joseph? Who wants to play Joseph? Who never got to play Joseph when you were a kid? I need a Joseph. Come on up. First Joseph up gets the, you're gonna have to work with me here, you guys. I know it's hard to get out. Come on up. I've got a costume for you and everything. Oh, that's a shepherd costume, never mind. We'll hang on to that here. We're gonna call this the Joseph costume. There you go.
Does it have a hood?
It does have a hood.
Thank you, Nathan.
You're very welcome. You may want to lose your program. You can put it in the manger for now. Yep, that's the holding thing. All kinds of things. There you go. Stand right here. So Joseph is really interesting, right? Because like Mary, Joseph has to give his consent to this, right? He has a lot of options. Some of them are really not very good options. He can divorce Mary and put her aside quietly. He can turn her into the authorities. Bad things happen to Mary if that happens. So Joseph also takes on a really audacious challenge of raising a child that is not his, becoming a father, making a family with this new kind of situation that's happening here. Come over and stand right here behind Mary. There we go. We've got Mary and Joseph. Joseph never speaks in the New Testament. There is no place where anybody ever records a line. Joseph, you get no lines. I'm so sorry. No words for Joseph. He's sort of the strong silent type in Scripture. And yet the role he plays in this story is really significant. He becomes the foster dad, if you like, the stepdad, to this child. They become this beautiful, unconventional, slightly scandalous little family. And they journey on their way to Bethlehem. Mary is 9 months pregnant. It's a horrible time to make a cross-country journey, but by golly, she manages. You all know the story, right? They knock on every door. They can find nowhere to sleep. They end up in a barn. Here they are. And then miracles start happening. Shepherds show up, having heard a beautiful message in the sky. I think I've got 3 shepherds' costumes. Come on up. Here's one shepherd. Here, I think that's a king. Here you go. You got a shepherd. Perfect, we got a shepherd. And I need one more shepherd. Here we go. Hey, the last shall be first, my friend. Here you go. Put that around you. There you go. Shepherds, we've got shawls for you. It was probably kind of cold that night. Not freezing cold. This is Palestine. It doesn't get that cold. But we can imagine, right, that it's a cold night. The sky is clear, full of stars. And this angel appears. Who has been yearning to play an angel since you were a kid and you never got your chance? Hey, come on forward, my dear. This is your moment. This is your moment. I've got a role for you in just a minute. Here you go. Come and stand right up at the top so that we can see you presiding over the whole scene. We've got our shepherds, we've got our angel, we've got Mary and Joseph. We're gonna mix things up. One year I tried to do a Christmas pageant at 4:30 when we do it with the kids, where I differentiated the story that Luke tells that you just heard from the story that Matthew tells, which is the one with the Magi. Nobody wanted to hear about that. Nobody wants to do textual criticism on Christmas Eve. There are two very different stories about the Nativity. Come and talk with me about it later. I can tell you all about it. So in Luke, you heard about the shepherds. We didn't hear about the wise men. For the purposes of the manger scene, we include everybody, even though the wise men come in a different book, probably 3 years later. I need 3 wise men. That's how many tradition gives us, only because there are 3 gifts. That's why we have 3 wise men. Come on forward. I got a gift for you. You get to have, I don't know if this is gold, frankincense, or myrrh. You get to decide.
It's myrrh.
It's myrrh. Okay, it's myrrh. I got one here. You get either frankincense or gold. I think that's frankincense. We're going to call that frankincense. There's gold. 3 wise men. And you get fancy wise men capes. There you go. Wise men cape. Wise men cape. I know, it's very exciting. We've got our wise men, we've got our shepherds, we've got Mary, Joseph, and an angel. What we don't have are animals. I don't have live animals for you today. We do have animal costumes. The reason why we have this tradition at all, the first person to ever put live animals around a manger scene and then invite the townspeople to come up and play a part in this scene is because 801 Christmases ago, 801 years ago this night, in the year 1223, in a little town called Greccio in Italy, St. Francis of Assisi. Do you remember St. Francis of Assisi? You see him in gardens, right? He's the guy that holds the bird bath, because Francis loved animals, and he's always surrounded by animals. We sentimentalize the heck out of this guy, but he was actually kind of a rebel. St. Francis, when he was a young man, had a conversion experience. He became convinced that God wanted him to give away everything he had. Francis had been raised with quite a lot of wealth and privilege, and it turns out actually most of what he was giving away belonged to his parents. Resonate with anybody? Yeah. It's easy to be very, very generous with your parents' belongings, and Francis was very generous with his father's belongings. So generous that his father took him to court and sued him. In those days, court cases were adjudicated by the bishop in a cathedral, and in a very dramatic theatrical gesture, Francis stood before his father and removed all of his clothing and stripped naked and handed them to the bishop. Don't worry, bishop, I'm not going to act that part out, I promise. I was tempted. You can only act that out once, but then that's the end of the story. But Francis, from his very earliest days, had a keen sense of the theatrical. And in 1223, just a couple years before his death, he's in bad health, he said to his friend, I want to create the nativity, but for real. I want live animals, and I want a real cave. And I don't want some beautiful, I'm making these words up, I don't know exactly what Francis said, but I'm imagining. He said something like, I don't want a beautiful European stained Mary. I want a real Mary, and a real Joseph, and real shepherds, and a real angel. I don't know if he got a real angel, but someone dressed as an angel. He began this tradition of, we've got one over here, right? The whole reason we have manger scenes, the whole reason we have creches, the whole reason we have Christmas pageants is because Francis wanted you to see this story before your very eyes. Remember, this is 1223. Theater and church are basically the same thing. Francis had a keen sense of how to bring a story to life. He was teaching his followers how to pray in a very particular way. Francis wanted you not just to hear a story, not just to think about a story. Francis would have said, I want you to imagine yourself into this story. Close your eyes with me for a second, he might have said. Do this with me if you'd like to. Imagine a cold, clear night. Feel the nip of the chill against your skin. You're not wearing your Christmas best. You're wearing very rough, hand-hewn fabrics. You probably have no shoes on. You're poor. You're hungry. You're very, very afraid. And this is what you see. Open your eyes. You see this empty manger. You see these people gathered around you, and then in the stillness of a beautiful Italian evening, you hear the cry of a baby, because there's a character who's missing. Robin, are you out there? Aha. The whole story comes to life as soon as the baby arrives. This is Robin. This is Robin's first Christmas. Now, you all did exactly what I'm sure they did in 1223. You went, "Aww." I mean, come on up, Robin. We actually, like, if you want to hang out in the, I don't know if Robin's up for the manger. That's okay. You can just come and hang out. This story is cute and sentimental. The reason we do Christmas pageants with kids is because everybody loves a photo op, right? We love seeing our kids put on clothing. And thank you all for being a beautiful photo op and helping me to do this story. The reason why this works, I think, though, is actually it has a lot to do with Robin and what Robin represents, which is that this is not just the story that we all know by heart, the story that we've seen 1,000 times, the story that we've seen in 8 million creches around the world. Every time this story takes on new flesh, every time different bodies inhabit this story, we all have this kind of incredible opportunity to imagine ourselves in this story. It's not just Mary and Joseph. It's Cece and it's Robin. It's actual flesh and blood people who experienced this thing 2,000 years ago, which means there's room for you and me as flesh and blood people to experience it again with a new baby and a new Mary and a new Joseph and new shepherds and a new angel and new magi, because each one of us has a place in this story. Every year at the Christmas pageant at 4:30, I watch to see who, because we tell kids, like, bring a costume from home. We have a bunch of costumes available. Everybody can sit back out a costume. But I always watch to see, where's the misfit character? One year we had a shark at the manger. One year we had a Power Ranger. That was a good year. We've had Luke Skywalker at the manger. This year we had a giraffe that was hanging out in the manger before Jesus. So when Jesus went into the manger, he was like hugging this giraffe, which is historically inaccurate in every possible way. But isn't that amazing? The reason I've been thinking about this, I mean, part of it's like, it's fun. It's fun to see a character who doesn't fit. But I think in some ways, theologically, the character who doesn't fit in the manger might be the most important character in the whole story. Because that's me. That's where I am in this story. I don't know about you. As a queer person, it's taken me a long time to figure out where I fit in this story. This is a story that the way it's traditionally depicted in painting and in art doesn't seem to have a place for me. So I look for the lobster or the shark or the Power Ranger or Luke Skywalker, the character who doesn't make any sense in this story circa 1 AD, but makes all the sense in the world circa 2024, right? This is a story that is living. There's room for you in this story. There's room for me in this story. There's a poem that the choir is going to sing here in just a moment when we're doing communion. It's a beautiful poem. It was set to music by my friend Maggie. You're going to get to hear it in a minute. And this poem, the second stanza goes, I stand apart from the others here. It's in the voice of maybe like a shepherd who doesn't quite know how to come close to the manger. I stand apart from the others here. All too well, I know my place. And yet I too heard the voices calling us to Bethlehem, for the child is all and is come for all, even for one such as me. Friends, my prayer this Christmas is that you will find yourself in this story. I don't think it matters so much to the baby Jesus whether you believe this story or not, whether you believe in Jesus in the traditional ways that Christians have taught. What I think is more important is that you find a place for yourself in this story, that you let it happen to you, that you feel the emotions that are elicited by this story about misfits and people who are stepping out in incredible ways, people who are terrified of what's going to happen next, and they should be. This is a scary story. Herod's going to start killing babies in just a couple pages, right? We know that this is a story with a lot of fear and a lot of violence in its heart, and yet in the middle of it is this child's cry, which is always new, which is always fresh. It's the cry of the baby. It's the cry of God with us. That's what God sounds like. This story is still happening. It's happening today, and there is a place for each one of us in this story. Thank you, friends, for helping me to tell the Christmas story.